commentator, and they all had the same opinion. It was time for Doc to go. I mean, he's a good guy, but, you know, as a coach, I don't think this is a right fit. There's a couple of halves in sports. I'm going to defend Doc Rivers here. In the NFL, Andy Reid got fired. So did Pete Carroll twice and Bill Belichick because they didn't have what you need in the NFL, a top quarterback to win rings. Pete, Andy, and Bill got them, and they all got hardware. In the NBA, the have, everybody thinks it's a star. No, it's not. There's a lot of stars. Who's your number two? If you do not have a dependable, clutch number two star, you will not win titles. Doc did in Boston. Paul Pierce is clutch. He won a title. But in L.A., the Clippers, he had Blake Griffin next to Carmelo, the most overrated player in the league for 15 years. And then this team has Paul George. I've seen Paul George in Indy, OKC, and L.A. He's good. He ain't clutch, bruh. How do I know this is true? Because Michael Jordan, the best player ever, couldn't win without Pippen. Kevin Durant couldn't win titles without Steph. And LeBron's got titles with D-Wade, always clutch, and Kyrie Irving, a little bit of a head case, but he's a closer in clutch. By the way, the best basketball coach I've ever seen is Phil Jackson. When Pippen was his two, he won titles. When Kobe was a two to Shaq, he won titles. When Pau Gasol was a two to Kobe, he won titles. You know what he won when he didn't have a dependable clutch two in the playoffs? Nothing. Go ahead, but Doc Rivers didn't miss open jumpers. Doc Rivers didn't melt down. Look at the resumes of the other coaches you want to bring in. It's not as good as Doc Rivers. Belichick's record in the NFL pre-Brady, 41 wins and 57 losses. Pete Carroll, fired twice, was a slightly sub-500 coach pre-Russell Wilson. Rings when they got the guy. Paul George's history is clear. He is a very good player, but the reason he's more B+ than A+, he melts when it matters. By the way, Frank Vogel got fired too when he had Paul George. Now he's got LeBron. And Anthony Davis is a two. Now Frank Vogel's the talk of the town. Is Ty Lue going to make Paul George clutch? Sort of like Mike D'Antoni's going to make Russell Westbrook clutch? In the NFL, you got to have a quarterback or you end up being a TV broadcaster. You end up being Herm Edwards. You go to television, you're great. You go to college, you do a great job. But you're not coaching in the NFL very long if you don't have a quarterback, especially in the last 7 to 10 years. The game has changed, man. Used to be able to win with defense. They changed all the rules now. It's pinball out there. Everybody bouncing around, can't hit anybody. The rules have all changed. Maybe you could do it 20 years ago. You can't now. And in the NBA, it's not just about the star. Michael was a star and didn't win anything. He didn't win anything until he had Pippen. You got to have a two. Doc had it in Boston and won. Should have won a second championship. Got to a game 7 and, Meta World, talked with a psychologist. He told us hit a jumper and it's all history. But go ahead, bang on Doc. But when he had a two, he won. And when Pete didn't have a quarterback, he was fired Pete Carroll in New England and fired Pete Carroll in New York. And Pete Carroll was 14 and 18 in Seattle, and they were ready to run him out of town as he had Matt Flynn in the locker room ready to take the Seahawks out. Then something called Russell Wilson happened, just like something called Paul George happened in L.A. I like Paul. I've met Paul. He's a good player. He's a really good player. But we got a history here, and the history is Doc wins with a good two, and Paul shrinks when he's asked to be the one of the two in the playoffs. All right, coming up.